A weathered hand clutches a crumpled piece of paper. 7 rules are typed in bold. Blood stains the bottom corner. They found the last guy in pieces. His body was scattered across 3 different aisles. The police called it an industrial accident. But I know better. He broke rule number 5. I sat in my barely furnished apartment in Ashwood Falls, a forgotten town in the Pacific Northwest, staring at the eviction notice taped to my door. 24 years old and completely out of options. The notice gave me 72 hours to pay 3 months of back rent or face removal. My bank account showed $12.37. The job listing appeared on my phone at exactly midnight. I had been scrolling through employment sites for the 4th hour, growing more desperate with each rejection email piling up in my inbox. The post was simple and direct. Night inventory associate needed immediately. Ashwood Distribution Center, $10 p.m. to $7 a.m. 5 nights weekly, $25 per hour. No experience required. Must be willing to follow all workplace guidelines. $25 an hour for basic warehouse work seemed too good to be true. But when you are facing homelessness, you do not ask too many questions. I sent my application at 12:07 a.m. My phone rang at 12:08 a.m. The voice on the other end was deep and measured. Stefan Clark? This is Jeremy Walsh from Ashwood Distribution Center. I received your application. Can you come in for an interview tomorrow evening at 8 p.m.? Yes, I answered immediately. I can definitely be there. Good. He paused. The address is 1847 Industrial Way. Look for the brick building with no sign. Do not be late. The line went dead before I could ask any follow-up questions. I arrived at the location 15 minutes early. The building sat at the edge of Ashwood Falls, where the streetlights stopped working and the pavement turned to gravel. A massive brick structure loomed in the darkness, its windows covered with decades of grime. No company name adorned the exterior. No loading dock lights illuminated the entrance. Just a single bare bulb above a steel door marked with a faded number 7. I pushed through the door into a reception area that smelled of mildew and old paper. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. A man in his late 40s sat behind a metal desk covered in file folders and coffee-stained documents. Stefan Clark? He stood up, extending his hand. He was built like someone who had spent years doing manual labor, with broad shoulders and calloused hands. His dark hair was streaked with gray and deep lines framed his brown eyes. I am Jeremy Walsh, thanks for coming in. His handshake was firm but brief. Follow me to my office. I walked behind him down a narrow hallway with peeling paint and water-stained ceiling tiles. His office was cramped with filing cabinets lining every wall and a desk buried under inventory sheets. An ancient computer monitor flickered in the corner. Sit down, Jeremy said, gesturing to a folding metal chair. Your application says you have warehouse experience. 2 years at a logistics center in Seattle, I confirmed. Mostly inventory management and order fulfillment. Jeremy nodded, seeming satisfied. The work here is straightforward. Overnight shift 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. 5 nights a week. You will be restocking returned items, conducting inventory checks, and maintaining the facility. We pay $25 an hour, which is well above market rate. The pay caught my attention immediately. $25 an hour would solve my rent problem within a month. I leaned forward, trying not to appear too eager. That sounds perfect. When would I start? Tomorrow night, if you are available. Jeremy's expression tightened. Our last employee left suddenly. We need someone reliable right away. I can definitely start tomorrow, I said quickly. Is there anything specific I should know about the position? Jeremy opened a drawer and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He placed it on the desk and slid it toward me. These are the rules for the night shift. You must read them carefully and follow them exactly. I picked up the paper expecting standard workplace safety guidelines. Instead, I found a numbered list that made my stomach tighten. Rule 1. Do not answer the office telephone if it rings after midnight. Let it ring until it stops. Rule 2. Do not look directly at any windows for longer than 5 seconds after midnight. Count out loud if necessary. Rule 3. If you hear knocking sounds from the storage area, investigate within 5 minutes. If you find nothing, exit the building immediately and wait in your vehicle for exactly 10 minutes before returning. Rule 4. The vending machine in the break room will make unusual sounds between 1 a.m. and 1:30 a.m. Stay away from the break area during this time period. Do not investigate the sounds. Rule 5. If you see someone else in the building after midnight, do not approach them. Do not speak to them. Immediately leave the building and call the number listed at the bottom of this page. Do not return until instructed. Rule 6. Always knock 3 times before entering the office, even if you are certain it is empty. Rule 7. Complete all assigned inventory tasks before 5 a.m. Do not remain in the building past 7 a.m. under any circumstances. I looked up at Jeremy, waiting for him to smile or indicate this was some kind of joke. His face remained completely serious. These are unusual rules, I said carefully. Jeremy's eyes met mine. They are necessary for your safety. Following them is a mandatory condition of employment. I read through the list again. None of the rules seemed immediately dangerous, just bizarre. But the $25 per hour kept echoing in my mind, along with the eviction notice on my apartment door. What happens if the phone rings after midnight? I asked. You do not answer it, Jeremy replied flatly. That is all you need to know. His tone made it clear that further questions would not be welcome. I folded the paper and placed it in my jacket pocket. I can follow these rules. No problem. Jeremy's shoulders relaxed slightly. Good. I will be here for your first night to train you. After that, you will work alone for most of the shift. I arrive at 7 a.m. to relieve you and handle the administrative work. He pulled out a standard employment contract and slid it across the desk along with a pen. I scanned through the legal text quickly, finding nothing unusual, then signed at the bottom. Jeremy took the contract back and produced a set of keys and a plastic ID badge. This will give you access to all necessary areas: the main entrance, storage rooms, and office. The alarm code is printed on the back of your badge. You must disarm it when you arrive and set it when you leave. I took the items, feeling the weight of the keys in my palm. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Jeremy nodded, but I noticed how his gaze shifted away when he spoke again. Just follow the rules exactly as written. We have had issues with employees who did not take them seriously. The way he said issues made me pause, but I needed this job too desperately to seem difficult. I understand. You will not have any problems with me. Jeremy stood up, ending our meeting. Be here tomorrow at 9:30 p.m. I will give you the complete training before your first shift officially starts. As I walked to my car, I pulled out the list of rules again and read through them one more time. The rational part of my brain suggested this might be an elaborate test of how well I followed directions. Perhaps the building had quirks, old pipes that made knocking sounds, a faulty telephone system, a temperamental vending machine, and these rules were practical workarounds. Whatever the explanation, I could not afford to be picky. I needed $25 an hour more than I needed answers. I arrived at the warehouse at 9:25 p.m. The building looked even more ominous at night, its weathered brick facade barely visible under a single security light that cast long shadows across the cracked parking lot. Jeremy was waiting at the front entrance, keys in hand. Right on time. Good, he said, nodding approvingly. Let me show you everything before I leave you alone. I followed him inside, where he demonstrated how to disarm the security system using the code on my badge. The alarm panel beeped softly as the red light switched to green. First thing every night, check this clipboard. Jeremy pointed to a metal clipboard hanging near the entrance. It lists any special task for your shift. Most nights it is just the standard routine, but occasionally we get priority orders that need processing by morning. The warehouse was larger than it appeared from outside. Tall metal shelving units stretched in neat rows throughout the main floor. The concrete was worn but clean, marked with faded yellow lines. Your primary job is restocking returns, Jeremy explained, leading me to a staging area where boxes sat on metal tables. Customers return parts for various reasons. You check them against the return documentation, verify they are in sellable condition, then place them back in their proper locations. He demonstrated the process with a set of spark plugs, checking them against a form before walking me to the appropriate shelf. Inventory checks are your second priority. He moved to a computer terminal on a rolling cart. The system will indicate which sections need counting each night. Scan the shelf barcode, count every item, and enter the total. Straightforward process. For the next 2 hours, Jeremy walked me through every corner of the warehouse. He showed me where different automotive parts were stored, how to use the inventory scanner, and the proper documentation methods. The layout was logical: smaller parts near the front, larger components toward the back. "Break room is here," Jeremy said, opening a door to reveal a small space with a table, chairs, microwave, and vending machine. "Refrigerator works if you bring food. Vending machine takes cash, but remember Rule 4, stay out between 1 a.m. and 1:30 a.m. if it makes strange sounds." I nodded, though the rule still seemed bizarre. As midnight approached, Jeremy checked his watch. Almost time for me to leave. "Any questions?" "I think I understand everything," I said, though I was not entirely confident. Jeremy's expression grew serious. "Most importantly, remember those rules. All 7 of them. Follow them exactly." "I will," I promised, patting my pocket where I had placed the folded paper. Jeremy walked me back to the front of the warehouse. "I will return at 7 a.m. to relieve you. If there is a genuine emergency, fire, break-in, call the number posted by the telephone. Otherwise, you should be fine alone." At exactly midnight, Jeremy grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. "Good luck on your first night. Remember the rules." The heavy metal door closed behind him with a solid sound, leaving me completely alone in the warehouse. I stood there for a moment, listening to the hum of fluorescent lights overhead and the occasional settling sounds of the building. The silence felt oppressive. I checked the clipboard. Tonight's tasks were simple: restock 3 boxes of returns, conduct inventory on aisles 7 through 9, and organize the tool section. I started with the returns. The work was mundane but straightforward. Each return had documentation listing the item, return reason, and storage location. I spent the first hour carefully checking spark plugs, oil filters, and belt assemblies, verifying they matched their descriptions before returning them to their proper shelves. Around 1:15 a.m., I remembered Rule 4 about avoiding the break room if the vending machine made unusual sounds. I paused, listening carefully. I heard nothing out of the ordinary, just normal building sounds, the hum of lights, and the heating system cycling. I continued with my inventory checks, methodically scanning shelf barcodes and counting packages. The repetitive task was almost meditative, and I found myself relaxing into the routine. The office telephone never rang. The vending machine remained quiet. There were no mysterious knocking sounds from the storage area. By the time I finished organizing the tool section around 5 a.m., I was beginning to wonder if the rules were some elaborate prank for new employees. The rest of my shift passed without incident. I completed all assigned tasks by 6:30 a.m. and spent the remaining time double-checking my work. When Jeremy arrived at 7 a.m., I was ready to leave. "How did it go?" he asked, hanging his jacket on a hook. "Fine," I replied. "Got everything done." "No problems." He nodded, seeming unsurprised but somewhat relieved. "Good. See you tonight then." My 2nd through 4th nights followed the same pattern. I arrived, disarmed the alarm, checked the clipboard, and Jeremy left at midnight with the same reminder to follow the rules. I worked through my assignments and nothing unusual happened. The telephone did not ring. The vending machine was quiet. No strange knocking echoed through the warehouse. I did feel foolish when I needed to enter the office to file paperwork and stopped to knock 3 times on the door of an empty room. But I did it anyway, just as instructed. By my 5th night, I had started to question the rules seriously. 5 nights had passed without a single strange occurrence. I began to suspect the rules might simply be meaningless protocols established by some overly cautious former manager. As I checked inventory that night, methodically counting items and entering numbers into the system, I wondered if Jeremy was just testing my ability to follow instructions. No matter how arbitrary, whatever the explanation, the work itself was manageable. The pay was excellent. If following 7 strange rules was the price for financial stability, I could live with that. I heard the warehouse door close behind Jeremy as he left for the night. My watch showed exactly midnight. 6 nights into this job, and the routine had become familiar. I grabbed the clipboard and scanned tonight's assignments. More returns to restock, inventory checks for aisles 10 through 12, and maintenance work in the electrical components section. For the first hour, I worked steadily through a box of brake components, matching each one against its return documentation. The warehouse was quiet except for the fluorescent lights and the heating system. Around 1:15 a.m., I was kneeling to place brake pads on a bottom shelf when I heard it. A strange sound from the break room direction. I froze, listening more carefully. There it was again. A weird mechanical groaning like something straining inside the vending machine. Rule 4 immediately came to mind. Stay away from the break room during unusual vending machine sounds between 1 a.m. and 1:30 a.m. My heart beat faster. For 6 nights, nothing unusual had happened. I had started thinking the rules were pointless leftovers from old building quirks. But now, hearing that unsettling mechanical groan echoing through the warehouse, I was not sure anymore. I checked my watch. 1:17 a.m. I needed to stay clear of the break room for another 13 minutes. I grabbed my inventory scanner and headed to the opposite end of the warehouse. The farther I got from the break room, the fainter the groaning became, though I could still hear it faintly. The sound continued intermittently as I scanned packages. I tried to focus on my work, but found myself constantly checking my watch, waiting for 1:30 a.m. At exactly 1:30 a.m., the groaning stopped. The sudden silence was almost as unsettling as the noise had been. I waited another 5 minutes before cautiously making my way back toward the break room. Standing in the doorway, everything looked normal. The vending machine hummed quietly with its usual operational sound. The fluorescent light flickered slightly as it always did. I approached the vending machine carefully, examining it from all angles. Nothing seemed damaged or out of place. Just an ordinary snack dispenser with rows of chips and candy, visible through the glass. After confirming everything appeared normal, I returned to my work, finishing the brake component restocking and completing my inventory checks. The rest of the night passed without incident, though I found myself listening more intently to every sound. When Jeremy arrived at 7 a.m. the next morning, I considered mentioning what I had heard but decided against it. The rules had worked. I had avoided the break room during the strange sounds and nothing bad had happened. "How did it go last night?" Jeremy asked. "Fine," I replied. "Got everything done on the list." He nodded, seeming satisfied. My 7th night started normally. Jeremy showed me the tasks, left at midnight with his reminder about the rules, and I began work. At 1:15 a.m. it started again. The vending machine. But this time the sound was louder, more aggressive. Not just mechanical groaning, but metal grinding against metal, a harsh scraping that echoed throughout the warehouse. I immediately stopped what I was doing. The sound was significantly worse than the previous occurrence. Loud enough that I worried about equipment malfunction or fire hazard, but rules were rules. I deliberately moved to the farthest corner of the warehouse, putting maximum distance between myself and the break room. Then something new happened. The office telephone started ringing. The sudden shrill sound cut through the grinding noise, creating a discordant alarm that made the hair on my arm stand up. Rule 1 flashed in my mind. Do not answer the office telephone after midnight. I stood frozen between shelves, listening to the two sounds compete. The grinding metal from the vending machine and the persistent ringing of the telephone. The telephone rang continuously. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 3. I checked my watch repeatedly, counting the minutes. Almost 5 minutes of continuous ringing passed before it suddenly stopped, cutting off mid-ring. The grinding from the vending machine continued as the only sound. My hands were shaking slightly. What kind of telephone rings for 5 minutes straight? Who would be calling a warehouse at nearly 1:30 a.m.? And what was happening to that vending machine? At exactly 1:30 a.m., the grinding noise stopped. The warehouse returned to its normal, quiet state. I waited several minutes before cautiously approaching the break room. Just like before, everything looked completely normal. The vending machine displayed its products as usual, with no sign of the violent grinding it had been making minutes earlier. Walking to the office, I looked at the telephone on the desk. The message light was not blinking. No indication anyone had called. It sat there innocuously, as if the 5 minutes of incessant ringing had never happened. A chill ran through me as I stood there. The rules were not meaningless after all. They were warnings. Specific targeted warnings about phenomena that actually occurred. As I returned to my tasks, I felt increasingly uneasy. The warehouse no longer seemed like a simple storage facility. The shadows between the tall shelves looked deeper. Every normal building sound made me tense. Despite my growing discomfort, I reminded myself why I was here. $25 per hour to follow strange rules and complete basic tasks. My landlord needed payment. My credit card debt was not going to pay itself. I forced myself to focus on the remaining tasks. methodically scanning inventory and organizing parts. But I could not shake the feeling that something was watching me from the shadows, something that knew I was alone, something testing whether I would follow the rules. I heard the knocking at 2:15 a.m. It started as a distant sound that I might have dismissed as building settling, but quickly developed into a deliberate rhythm. 3 sharp knocks followed by a pause, then 3 more. The sound echoed through the empty warehouse, bouncing off metal shelving and concrete floors. I set down my inventory scanner and listened. The knocking continued, growing more insistent with each repetition. It was coming from the storage area. Rule 3 flashed through my mind. Investigate storage area knocking within 5 minutes or exit building for 10 minutes if nothing found. My mouth went dry as I grabbed the heavy flashlight from the utility shelf. This was the first time I had to deal with the knocking mentioned in the rules. I checked my watch. 2:17 a.m. I had 3 minutes to start investigating. The knocking grew louder with each step I took toward the rear storage section. My footsteps seemed unnaturally loud against the concrete. "Hello?" I called out, immediately regretting it. The rules did not say anything about announcing myself. The knocking intensified as I approached. Faster now, more urgent. The rhythm remained the same, but the volume increased until it felt like it was vibrating through my chest. I switched on the flashlight. The beam cut through shadows as I turned the corner, into the rear storage section, and then silence. The knocking stopped so abruptly that the sudden absence of sound felt like physical pressure against my eardrums. I stood frozen, flashlight raised, listening to my own breathing. "Is someone there?" I asked. My voice sounded small in the empty space. No response. I began searching methodically, checking behind each shelf unit. The rear storage area contained larger automotive parts, transmissions, engine blocks, exhaust systems, creating plenty of spaces where someone could hide. I shined my flashlight into every gap and corner, finding nothing but dust. After checking the entire storage area, I moved to the loading dock. The large rolling door was securely locked. The hydraulic lift was powered down. I tested the side exit door, still locked from inside exactly as it should be. Nothing was out of place. No signs of entry, no indication that anyone or anything had been making those sounds. I checked my watch. 2:23 a.m. I had spent about 6 minutes searching and found absolutely nothing. According to Rule 3, I now needed to leave the building for 10 minutes. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the main entrance. The night air hit me with a cold blast as I stepped outside. I made sure the door locked behind me and walked to my car. Once inside, I started the engine for heat but kept my eyes fixed on the warehouse. The building looked completely ordinary. Nothing moved inside or outside. I sat there for exactly 10 minutes, watching the second hand on my watch, half expecting something bizarre to happen. But nothing did. At 2:34 a.m., I turned off my car and headed back inside, disarming and rearming the security system. The warehouse interior seemed unchanged. Same lighting, same rows of shelves, same quiet hum. I decided to check the storage area again. Everything remained exactly as I had left it. No signs of disturbance. With nothing else to do, I headed toward the front to continue my inventory tasks. That was when I noticed something strange. The break room door was slightly open, though I was certain I had not been near it since before 1 a.m. A faint light spilled from the crack. I approached cautiously, pushing the door open with my foot. The break room looked normal at first glance. Then my eyes landed on the vending machine. The retrieval tray at the bottom was open. Inside sat a chocolate bar. I had not used the vending machine at all tonight. I had not even entered the break room. I moved closer, my steps slow and deliberate. The chocolate bar was a standard brand, nothing special except for a small piece of paper wrapped around its middle, secured with a rubber band. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for it. The chocolate was room temperature, as if it had been sitting there for some time. I slipped off the rubber band and unfolded the note. The message was typed in plain font on ordinary white paper. "Thank you for following the rules. Your compliance ensures everyone's safety. Continue adhering to all guidelines exactly as written." I read it 3 times, my mouth going dry. The implications hit me all at once. Someone or something was watching me. Someone had accessed the vending machine while I was outside. Someone calling themselves management was monitoring my adherence to those 7 rules. But Jeremy had left at midnight, and I was supposed to be alone until 7 a.m. The building was locked. The security system was armed. No one else should have been able to enter without setting off alarms. I looked around the break room, suddenly feeling exposed. Were there cameras I had not noticed? Was someone hiding somewhere in the warehouse? My hands shook as I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket along with the chocolate bar. The weight felt like evidence that I was not imagining things, that the rules were not just bizarre guidelines, but necessary protections against something I did not understand. I left the break room, making sure to close the door behind me. The warehouse suddenly felt different, not just empty, but occupied in a way I could not see. The spaces between shelves seemed darker. The ordinary sounds of the building now carried potential meanings I could not decipher. I had more than 4 hours left in my shift, and for the first time since starting this job, I was not sure I would make it to morning. I found it impossible to focus during the rest of my shift. Every sound in the warehouse seemed to echo with new meaning. The hum of fluorescent lights, the settling of metal shelves, even my own footsteps bouncing back from distant corners. Something was watching me. I could not see it, but I felt its attention like a physical weight. The inventory scanner lay where I had left it. I picked it up with hands that were not quite steady, trying to remember where I had left off. I tried focusing on the inventory list. Scan barcode, check quantity, enter number, move to next item. Basic work that now felt impossibly complicated. Metal creaked somewhere in the distance. Normally, I would have written it off as building settling, but now each sound carried potential meaning. I moved to the next aisle, scanning items mechanically while constantly fighting the urge to look over my shoulder. My eyes drifted toward the windows near the ceiling, dark rectangles against the warehouse walls. I caught myself staring at one and quickly counted 1, 2, 3, 4. I jerked my gaze away before hitting the 5-second mark mentioned in Rule 2. Time crawled. Every glance at my watch showed only minutes had passed when it felt like hours. I kept my head down, focusing on work while staying aware of my surroundings. The note in my pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric. Your compliance ensures everyone's safety. Everyone's? Who else was there to protect besides me? When my watch finally showed 6:45 a.m., I gathered my completed paperwork and made sure everything was in order. The sky outside the high windows had lightened to pre-dawn gray. I stood near the entrance, clipboard in hand, watching the door and waiting for Jeremy. At exactly 7 a.m., the front door opened. Jeremy walked in wearing his usual work jacket, looking tired but unsurprised to see me. He hung his jacket on the hook and nodded. "Morning. Everything go okay?" Instead of giving my usual response, I pulled the note from my pocket and held it out. "Someone left this in the vending machine while I was outside for my 10-minute break." Jeremy took the paper, unfolding it carefully. His expression changed as he read it. Not surprise, but deepening concern that made my stomach tighten. He read it twice before looking up at me. "You followed Rule 3. It was not a question." "Yes. I heard knocking in the storage area, checked it out, found nothing, and went outside for 10 minutes like the rules say." Jeremy folded the note precisely along its original creases. "Good, that is good. Who is management?" I asked, pointing at the note in his hand. Jeremy's mouth tightened into a thin line. He looked at the note again, then at me. "I do not know exactly. I just know they monitor compliance." "Monitor compliance?" I repeated. "Jeremy, what is this place? What is going on here?" He sighed, rubbing a hand across his face. "Look, Stefan. The employees before you who did not follow the rules, they did not just quit." A cold feeling spread through my chest. "What do you mean?" "They disappeared completely." Jeremy's voice was low, almost a whisper. "One man thought the telephone rule was stupid. Answered it after midnight. Never saw him again. His car was still in the parking lot, but he was gone." I stared at him, waiting for the admission that this was some weird joke. But Jeremy's expression remained grave, his eyes tired but serious. "What kind of facility is this?" I asked. Jeremy shrugged, but the gesture seemed forced. "It is just a warehouse. It pays well for basic work. $25 per hour to stock shelves and check inventory. All you have to do is follow the guidelines." I studied his face, looking for any sign this was an elaborate prank. There was nothing but exhaustion and grim sincerity. "That is it? Just follow the rules and do not ask questions?" "That is it," Jeremy confirmed, handing the note back to me. "You have done well so far. Keep it up." He turned away, effectively ending the conversation. I stood there for a moment, the note in my hand, watching as Jeremy walked toward his office. He did not look back. I continued my shifts with newfound respect for the rules. After finding that note and hearing Jeremy's ominous confirmation about disappearing employees, I took every guideline seriously. The warehouse was no longer just a job with weird quirks. It was a place where following instructions meant survival. 3 nights after my conversation with Jeremy, the telephone rang at 2 a.m. I was scanning inventory far enough from the office that the sound was muffled but still unmistakable. I kept working, counting rings under my breath. 10 rings, then silence. The following night, I heard the familiar grinding from the break room at exactly 1:15 a.m. I immediately abandoned my work and walked to the farthest corner of the warehouse, where I busied myself until 1:35 a.m., giving an extra 5 minutes after the sound stopped. When I finally checked the break room, I found a package of cookies sitting in the vending machine tray. I had not purchased anything. Wrapped around the package was another note. "Your consistency is appreciated." Management and I pocketed both the cookies and the note. By the end of my second week, I had established a routine. I scheduled tasks strategically, handling inventory in the back sections between 1 a.m. and 1:30 a.m. to stay far from the break room, positioning myself near the exit after 2 a.m. in case knocking started, and avoiding the office area after midnight when the telephone might ring. The knocking incidents were the most disruptive. They happened roughly twice a week, always after 2 a.m., always requiring me to drop everything and investigate. I never found anything, which meant taking those 10-minute breaks in my car. During one particularly cold night, I sat shivering in the parking lot, watching the warehouse through frosted windows. Nothing moved inside or outside the building. When I returned, a chocolate bar waited in the vending machine with the now familiar note. "Do they want something from me?" I asked my empty apartment one morning after a shift, spreading the 5 notes I had collected across my kitchen table. Each one thanked me for compliance in slightly different wording but offered no explanation. I never saw who or what left the notes. The security system remained armed whenever I took my mandatory breaks outside. Yet somehow, management knew my every move. During my 4th week, all 3 major phenomena occurred in a single night. The vending machine started at 1:05 a.m., earlier than usual. The telephone rang at 2:20 a.m., just after I had resumed work. And at 4:15 a.m., the knocking began in the storage area. I followed each guideline exactly, avoided the break room, let the telephone ring unanswered, investigated the storage area, found nothing, and took my 10-minute break outside. When I returned, a small collection awaited me in the vending machine tray. 2 chocolate bars, a bag of chips, and a candy bar. The note read, "Exceptional performance under pressure. Your dedication ensures mutual safety." Management and I developed a theory that the incidents were tests, deliberate challenges to see if I would break under stress or maintain compliance. The timing seemed too perfect, the escalation too calculated. But who was testing me and why? Russell clearly knew more than he shared, but our morning interactions had become increasingly brief. He asked if everything went okay. I said yes. We both pretended the warehouse was normal. By my 6th week, I had mapped the patterns completely. The vending machine only made noise between 1:00 a.m. and 1:30 a.m., never a minute before or after. The telephone only rang after midnight, usually between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. The knocking always stopped when I investigated, regardless of how long I spent searching. I started keeping a small notebook in my pocket, documenting each incident with timestamps. The data revealed no obvious pattern to when events occurred, but absolute consistency in their duration and response to my actions. I created a system to minimize disruption. I did concentration-intensive tasks before 1 a.m. when the warehouse remained peaceful. I kept my jacket and keys ready for quick exit if knocking started. I planned breaks around the vending machine's active period. Some nights passed without incident. Others featured all 3 phenomena in seemingly random order. The only constant was that when I followed the rules, I remained safe. Morning. "Everything go okay?" Jeremy asked at the end of a particularly active night, 7 weeks into my employment. "Fine," I answered automatically. He nodded, hanging his jacket on the hook. "You have lasted longer than most." It was the first time he had volunteered information beyond basic pleasantries since our conversation about disappeared employees. How long did the previous person last? I asked. Jeremy's eyes flicked to the office door. 3 weeks. Answered the telephone. I wanted to ask more, but Jeremy had already turned away, signaling the end of our conversation. That night at home, I counted my paychecks. The job had already helped me catch up on rent and make a significant dent in my credit card debt. My landlord had stopped giving me those warning looks. For $25 per hour, I could handle unexplained phenomena and cryptic notes. During week 8, I found myself almost comfortable with the routine. The incidents had become just another workplace hazard to manage. I knew exactly what to do when the telephone rang or the vending machine groaned. I kept my flashlight ready for storage area investigations. The notes continued appearing, always after I followed guidelines correctly. Sometimes they contained only a single word, perfect. Other times longer messages. Your consistent adherence maintains the balance. We appreciate your service. Management. I never learned who or what caused the phenomena. I never discovered the identity of management or how they accessed the vending machine during my breaks. I never understood why the telephone rang or what might happen if I answered it. But I had created a system that worked. I followed the rules. I completed my tasks. I survived each shift. And somewhere between the fear and the mystery, I found a strange kind of stability. I knew something was different the moment I walked into the warehouse on my 9th week. The air felt heavier, charged with tension I could not explain. Jeremy seemed more on edge than usual during our brief exchange before midnight. Remember the rules tonight, he said, his voice carrying unusual weight. All 7 of them, especially Rule 5. Rule 5. If you see someone else in the building after midnight, do not approach them. Do not speak to them. Immediately leave the building and call the number listed. Has something changed? I asked, sensing his unease. Jeremy shook his head. Just follow the rules exactly. No exceptions tonight. He left at midnight and I began my routine checks. Everything seemed normal at first. I restocked returned alternators, conducted inventory on aisles 13 through 15. At 1:47 a.m., I was scanning brake drums when I saw movement at the far end of the warehouse. A figure stood between the shelves. My blood went cold. In 9 weeks, I had never seen another person in this building after midnight. The figure was tall, wearing what appeared to be dark clothing, standing completely still in the shadows between 2 shelving units. I froze, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Rule 5 screamed in my mind. Do not approach. Do not speak. Leave immediately. I slowly set down my scanner, trying not to make sudden movements. The figure had not moved. It just stood there watching me from the darkness. I took a step backward, then another. My eyes never left the figure. It remained motionless, but I could feel its attention focused entirely on me. I backed toward the main entrance, my hand fumbling for my keys in my pocket. The figure still had not moved, but something about its stillness was more terrifying than if it had been chasing me. I reached the front door, my hands shaking as I grabbed my jacket from the hook. I risked one more glance back. The figure was gone. The space where it had been standing was empty, just shadows and shelves. My rational mind tried to convince me I had imagined it, that the stress and lack of sleep had caused a hallucination. But I knew what I had seen. Someone or something had been standing there in the warehouse with me. I pushed through the door into the night air, my breath coming in short gasps. I fumbled with my phone, pulling out the folded rules paper from my pocket to find the emergency number listed at the bottom. I dialed with trembling fingers. The phone rang 3 times before a voice answered. Not Jeremy's voice. This was different. Flat, emotionless, like a recording, but with subtle inflections that suggested something alive. Ashwood Distribution Center Emergency Line. State your employee identification. Stefan Clark, I managed to say, my voice shaky. Badge number 4723. State the nature of your emergency. I saw someone else in the building. Rule 5, I left immediately. There was a pause. I could hear nothing on the other end. No background noise, no breathing, just absolute silence. Confirmed, the voice said finally. You followed protocol correctly. Remain outside the facility. Do not re-enter under any circumstances. A supervisor will arrive within 30 minutes to clear the building. You are dismissed for the remainder of your shift with full pay. What was that thing? I asked, unable to stop myself. Remain outside the facility, the voice repeated. Do not re-enter. Do not approach anyone who exits the building before your supervisor arrives. The line went dead. I stood in the parking lot staring at the warehouse. Every light was still on inside. Through the high windows, I could see nothing moving. The building looked completely ordinary, but I knew better. I got in my car, locked the doors, and waited. 23 minutes later, Jeremy's truck pulled into the parking lot. He parked next to my car and walked over, tapping on my window. I rolled it down. Jeremy, you did the right thing, he said, cutting me off. His face was grave in the dim light. You followed Rule 5 exactly as written? That is why you are still here. What was it? Who was that in there? Jeremy looked at the warehouse, then back at me. I do not know. I have never seen it. But others have. The ones who approached it or tried to speak to it. He trailed off, shaking his head. They were never seen again. How do you clear the building? I asked. I do not clear it. I just wait until they signal it is safe. He pulled out his phone, checking a message. You should go home. Take tomorrow night off. Come back the night after. Everything will be back to normal by then. Normal, I repeated, the word sounding absurd. As normal as it gets here, Jeremy said with a grim smile. You did good tonight, Stefan. A lot of people would have been curious. Would have tried to investigate. You followed the rules and that saved your life. I drove home in a daze, my hands still shaking on the steering wheel. When I reached my apartment, I went straight to my kitchen table and spread out all the notes I had collected from management. 9 weeks of notes. 9 weeks of following bizarre rules. And tonight, I had finally understood the true stakes. The rules were not about passing tests or proving compliance. They were about survival. About navigating something that existed in that warehouse. Something that would kill me if I made even one mistake. I returned to work 2 nights later, as Jeremy had instructed. The warehouse looked exactly the same, but I approached it differently now. I understood what the rules were protecting me from. Jeremy was waiting at the entrance. Everything has been cleared. Tonight should be routine. Has that ever happened before? Someone appearing like that? Jeremy nodded slowly. 3 times in the past 4 years. 2 employees approached the figure. We never found them. 1 employee, smart like you, followed Rule 5. She quit the next day. Why did you not warn me more specifically? Because knowing too much makes people careless, Jeremy said. They start looking for it, watching for it. And that attention draws it closer. The rules work best when you follow them without overthinking. That night passed without major incident. The vending machine made its sounds. The telephone rang twice. I followed every rule with absolute precision, but I could not shake the memory of that figure standing in the shadows. The way it had watched me, the unnatural stillness of its posture. Over the next 3 weeks, I continued working, but something had changed inside me. The job had given me what I needed financially. My debts were paid, my rent was secure, and I had savings built up. But the cost to my peace of mind was becoming too high. I started looking for other employment. Office jobs, retail positions, anything that involved daylight hours and normal workplace rules. Within 2 weeks, I had 3 interviews lined up. During my 12th week at the warehouse, I received a job offer. It was not glamorous, data entry for an insurance company, but it paid reasonably and had normal hours. No supernatural phenomena, no cryptic notes from unseen management, no rules about avoiding mysterious figures in the darkness. I typed up my resignation letter that night. I walked into Jeremy's office the next morning after my shift, the resignation letter folded in my pocket. Jeremy looked up from his computer. Morning. Everything go okay? Fine, I replied. Then I pulled out the folded paper and placed it on his desk. I am giving my 2 weeks' notice. Jeremy picked up the letter, unfolded it, and read the brief sentences I had typed. His expression shifted to something I could not quite read, relief mixed with concern. You lasted longer than I expected, he said, refolding the letter. Most do not make it past the first month. The rules were not that hard to follow, I said. Jeremy looked at me for a long moment. You never asked what happened to the ones who did not follow them. It was not a question, but I responded anyway. I figured it was better not to know. Smart. He nodded, tapping my resignation letter against his desk. You found something else? Yes, office job. Regular hours? Good. He placed my letter in a folder and looked directly at me. Listen, Stefan, this is important. Never discuss anything about this warehouse with anyone. Not the rules, not the sounds, not the notes, nothing. The seriousness in his tone made me uncomfortable. Why not? Because some things follow you home, Jeremy said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The rules have been protecting you even when you are not here. A chill ran through me. For 12 weeks I had convinced myself that whatever strangeness existed in the warehouse stayed within its walls. The thought that it might have followed me home made my skin crawl. What exactly is this place? I asked. Jeremy shook his head. Just a warehouse that pays $25 per hour for basic work? That is all you need to know and all you should ever tell anyone who asks. He stood up, ending the conversation. I will process your paperwork. 2 weeks from today will be your last shift. The following 2 weeks passed in a blur of routine. The telephone rang at its usual times. The vending machine made its usual sounds. The knocking in the storage area followed its usual pattern. I followed the rules as meticulously as I had since my first day. Perhaps even more carefully now that I knew the finish line was approaching. During my second-to-last shift, I experienced all three phenomena again. The vending machine at 1:15 a.m., the telephone at 2:30 a.m., and knocking at 3:45 a.m. I handled each one by the book, and management left me a note. Your service has been exemplary. We will miss your compliance. The message unsettled me more than any previous note. The phrase "miss your compliance" suggested something was aware of my impending departure, something that had been watching me every single night. On my final night, I arrived at 9:30 p.m. as usual. Jeremy was there for the last time before my shift. Last night, he said, complete your tasks, follow the rules one more time, and you are done. I nodded, unable to find words that seemed adequate for the situation. Jeremy left at midnight, and I began my final shift at Ashwood Distribution Center. The hours passed slowly. I completed my tasks with mechanical precision, restocking returns, conducting inventory checks, maintaining equipment. Every action felt weighted with finality. At 1:15 a.m., the vending machine began its sounds. I moved to the far end of the warehouse, counting down the minutes until 1:30 a.m. At 2:17 a.m., the telephone rang. I let it ring, focusing on my work until it stopped. At 4:03 a.m., I heard knocking from the storage area. I investigated, found nothing, took my 10-minute break outside, and returned to finish my shift. At 6:30 a.m., with all my work completed, I walked to the break room. The vending machine sat quiet, its display showing the usual array of snacks. As I turned to leave, the machine made a soft click. The retrieval tray opened, revealing a single chocolate bar wrapped with a folded note. I hesitated, then took it and unwrapped the note. Thank you for your service, Stefan. Your compliance has been exemplary. Remember that the rules have been protecting you even outside these walls. Some things notice when patterns change. Be careful in your new endeavors. I read the note 3 times, then folded it and placed it in my pocket along with the chocolate bar. The implications were clear. Whatever supernatural forces existed in this warehouse had been aware of me beyond my shifts. The rules had been protecting me from more than just incidents within these walls, and now that I was leaving, those protections would end. At 7 a.m., Jeremy arrived for his shift. He hung his jacket on the hook by the door and looked at me. Everything go okay? He asked for the last time. Fine, I answered automatically. Then I added, I got another note. Jeremy nodded as if he had expected this. Management likes to say goodbye. I wanted to demand answers to the questions that had built up over 3 months, but I knew he would not provide them. Some mysteries were better left unexplored. I gathered my belongings and took one last look around the warehouse with its rows of automotive parts, its flickering fluorescent lights, its shadows that held secrets I would never understand. Good luck, Stefan, Jeremy said quietly. Remember what I told you. Never talk about this place. I walked out the door into the morning sunlight. The brightness felt harsh after 7 hours under artificial lighting. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror at the warehouse growing smaller in the distance. For 3 months, I had traded my peace of mind for financial stability. The job had given me exactly what I needed. Money to survive, money to build a foundation for something better. But it had taken something too. My sense of safety. My belief that the world operated according to rational rules. My confidence that I understood the boundaries between the normal and the impossible. I would start my new job in 3 days. A normal office with normal hours where the strangest workplace rule might be proper coffee pot etiquette. No mysterious telephone calls. No knocking in storage areas. No notes from unseen management. But as I pulled onto the highway heading away from Ashwood Falls, I could not shake the final warning in that last note. Some things notice when patterns change. I had followed the rules perfectly for 3 months. I had survived by maintaining absolute compliance. But now I was breaking the ultimate pattern. I was leaving, and whatever had been watching me in that warehouse would notice. My new job was everything I had hoped for. Normal hours, normal coworkers, normal tasks. I worked 9 to 5, entering data into spreadsheets, processing insurance claims, attending team meetings. Nothing supernatural occurred. No mysterious sounds, no cryptic notes. Just ordinary office work, but I could not shake the feeling that something was watching me. It started small. Objects in my apartment moving slightly from where I had left them. My coffee cup on the wrong side of the table. My keys hanging on a different hook. Small things that I might have dismissed as my own forgetfulness. Then the sounds began, knocking on my apartment walls at exactly 2:15 a.m. The same deliberate rhythm I had heard in the warehouse. 3 sharp knocks, pause, 3 more. I never investigated. I had learned that lesson well. My telephone rang at odd hours. Always after midnight. Always stopping after exactly 10 rings. I never answered. And sometimes in the corner of my vision I glimpsed movement. A figure standing in the shadows of my apartment. Tall, motionless, watching. I never looked directly at it. I remembered Rule 5. 3 weeks after leaving the warehouse, I found a chocolate bar on my kitchen counter. I had not purchased it. Wrapped around it was a familiar note. Patterns must be maintained. Compliance ensures safety. Return to your post or face the consequences of broken rules. Management. I stared at the note, my hands trembling. I had thought leaving the warehouse would free me. But the rules had been protecting me all along, even outside those walls. And by breaking the pattern of my nightly compliance, I had violated something far more fundamental than workplace guidelines. Management had given me a choice. Return to the warehouse, or face whatever consequences came from abandoning my post. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I had memorized months ago. Jeremy answered on the second ring. "This is Stefan Clark," I said, my voice steady despite my fear. "I need to discuss returning to my position." "I was wondering when you would call," Jeremy said quietly. "Come by tonight at 8 p.m. We will discuss your reinstatement." "The phenomena have been following me," I said. "The knocking, the figure, the notes." "I know," Jeremy replied. "They always follow the ones who leave. That is why most people who work here never leave at all. Once you become part of the pattern, you cannot break it without consequences. Why did you not warn me?" "Would you have believed me?" Jeremy asked. "Or would you have thought I was trying to trap you in a dead-end job?" He was right. I would never have believed him. "See you tonight," Jeremy said. "And Stefan? Welcome back." The line went dead. I sat in my apartment surrounded by the evidence of my haunting, the moved objects, the mysterious notes, the sense of being watched by something I could not see. I had 2 choices. Return to the warehouse and its 7 rules, or continue experiencing escalating phenomena until whatever was following me decided I had broken too many patterns to be allowed to survive. It was not really a choice at all. That night, I drove back to Ashwood Falls. The warehouse looked exactly as I remembered. Weathered brick, small windows, a single security light casting shadows across the parking lot. Jeremy was waiting at the entrance. "The rules still apply," he said as I approached. "All 7 of them. No exceptions." "I understand," I replied. He handed me my old ID badge and keys. They felt heavy in my palm, weighted with meaning beyond their physical mass. "Your shift starts at 10 p.m. tonight," Jeremy said, "and every night after that, for as long as management requires." I looked at the warehouse, understanding finally what it truly was. Not just a workplace with strange rules, but a trap. A pattern that once entered could never be escaped. Employment that lasted not until you chose to leave, but until management decided to release you. And management never released anyone. "How long have you worked here?" I asked Jeremy. He smiled grimly. 17 years. I tried to leave once after the first year. The same things happened to you started happening to me. I came back within 3 weeks. Has anyone ever successfully left? No one I have heard of. The rules protect us, but they also bind us. We are part of the pattern now. Part of whatever exists in this place. At 10 p.m., I walked through the warehouse door, disarmed the security system, and began my shift. The telephone rang at 2:15 a.m. I let it ring. The vending machine made sounds between 1:00 a.m. and 1:30 a.m. I stayed away. Knocking echoed from the storage area. At 3:45 a.m., I investigated, found nothing, and took my 10-minute break outside. When I returned, a chocolate bar waited in the vending machine tray with a note. Welcome home, Stefan. Your return ensures the pattern remains intact. Your compliance is appreciated. I pocketed the note and returned to my tasks. I had learned the truth too late. The 7 rules were not guidelines for a temporary job. They were the terms of a permanent contract signed the moment I first followed them. Some jobs you take for the money. Others you take because you have no choice. And some jobs take you and never let go. The Ashwood distribution center continues to operate. Job listings appear online periodically. Always at midnight. Always offering above-market wages for basic warehouse work. The listings mention that employees must be willing to follow all workplace guidelines. They never mention the 7 rules. They never explain why the position is always available, and they never tell applicants that once you start, you may never truly leave. If you see a listing for a warehouse job in Ashwood Falls that seems too good to be true, remember this story. Remember Stefan Clark, who thought he was taking a temporary position to solve his financial problems. Remember that some patterns, once entered, cannot be broken, and some rules exist not to guide you, but to bind you.